Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a KazSource family production. In this episode, we discuss marketing in 2018 and beyond, the state of sales, and disruption. Our guest today is Shane Snively. Shane is the COO of KazSource Inc. Shane is also the owner of Abiding Wealth Advisors and Chestnut Family Practice. And more than anything, he dives in deep with all the clients he works with. Because of his experience, he is a wealth of knowledge. So let's get right into this Shane Snively episode that features the best of episode number 1.
As someone who's been in business for all these years, what is your perspective on marketing today compared to those years past? And do you think, as a follow-up to that part of it, do you think business owners in their, say, 50s and 60s, the business owners that you're dealing with on a daily basis, the baby boomer generation, let's call it, do you feel like they're taking advantage of the way marketing is? Have they adapted to what's going on in the marketing world today?
I think just overall, the marketing it's so different, but in so many factors, it's the same. You go out and you're sourcing data. And back in the day, it was buying a list, and Johnny would sit down and cold call for 24 hours a day, very Glenn Ross.
That Johnny was you, right?
Yeah. Well, I did it. I was a pizza delivery guy, and people make fun of me, but, part of my strategy was I wanted to get in front of CPAs because I felt CPAs were the trusted advisor in any relationship, and I was humble enough to realize that the person doing your tax return, the IRS is the only person that's going to take your house. They're going to take your whatever if you don't pay them. So, when you look at the capital stack and saying who's being levered the most outside of a pastor, it's their CPA. So my goal was getting in front of as many CPAs as I could. And I realized that these people were away from their families during tax season, and they were tired and they were stressed out, and they didn't have an escape. So I would go around and I'd go buy 5 or 6, Domino pizzas or whoever, Pizza Hut. And ultimately I realized I need to, so I'd bring it, I'd knock it, would be at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and I'd drive around and I'd see, oh, wow, there's a CPA firm and there's 7 people still sitting at a CPA firm. Maybe they haven't had dinner. So I'd literally just go knock on the door and say, hey, I'm Shane Snively. I'm working with this company. Here's a gift from me to you. Here, I know you guys are in the grind, and I know you don't have time to talk to someone like me, at least not right now, but after tax season, would you guys let me come in and talk to you? And it was probably one of the most profound things I did, and it got me into the teaching circuit and the CPA market where I could go teach this, North Carolina Society of Accountants and different things, but I was kind of feeling like, hey, guys, I'm in the trench with you and your hard time here. And it was creative. And, I built some lifelong relationships from it. So, marketing to me is just how far you're going to take yourself out there and then what kind of convictions you have behind it, where I would say the big difference is the access to data that you just never had the ability to see it. If I know you are a Ohio State fan, but I also could have assumed you're the College of Charleston fan because now I can look at your LinkedIn profile, or I can look at your Facebook page, and I can see you love sports, or, all that data is out there and it's free. And I think that's the part that's so unique about today in selling, that you have the ability to kind of profile who you really want to work with. Because, if somebody's got something on there that they hate this group or hate that group, or I really can't stand this, and that's something that you disagree with, well, you can not call them. You can go to the next person that maybe says, I love Ohio State Buckeyes. I love this. I love that. I love that, to spend time with my kids and playing soccer. Well, if you can find that on LinkedIn, there, boy, you could easily go find someone that now shares your values as opposed to someone that's not. But ultimately, you still got to make the call. You got to still do the activity to get to that person, whether it's inviting them for a cup of coffee or going and seeing them. It's not still the point where, that people are just going to show up at your door and say, oh, I love your story and now I want to work with you.
Yeah.
You still hustle. hustle, and you still got to go out there and get it done. So I think that would be the only thing I would say is where I see there's a difference in that 50 to 60-year-old. That 50 to 60-year-old is still already out hustling. And if they were to embrace the social media aspect of it and saw just how much easier it is to do the things that they've been doing for 20 years, it would blow their mind. So yeah, I do think there's a gap in there. And now for me, it's trying to help my clients. And that's part of the reason why I was so tied to the content marketing company, because I look at it and say, wow, what a blessing. I've been working with these people for all these years. And now I have somebody that I'm a part of that I can actually bring in and help them with things that they really just don't know about. But it's not a huge learning curve when they look at it and say, wow, this is so much easier than what I was doing before. And it really gets them the ability for the first time to have a voice without having to go pay an advertising company or public relations company to go out and like hype them up. Well, this is stuff that they really care about, that they can in 10 seconds now talk to our content writer or you or John or Scott or somebody like that and say, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. Help me find people that are also passionate about that also could be buying my stuff. So, I mean, it's, it's way more efficient than it was. But ultimately, whoever's at the helm has to understand you still got to work it. You got to still actively go do it. It's just not going to come to you. And if you sit back and say, oh, that Facebook or, oh, that's not I don't need that. That's those young kids. Well, guess what? The young kids are the ones that are going to be buying your products when you're dead and gone. So you better engage with those people or you're not going to have a business to transfer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, partially it's find the youngest people in the room and have them help you learn this, or just go find somebody that can actually do it for you. Either way, you can't ignore it.
Right. Well, speaking of young people, and you've been someone who's hired quite a bit and you've managed people, that whole arena, like marketing, has changed. And you've already alluded to this, that the days of hiding in business seem to be over, or they are. I don't know if they seem to be. I think they are over. The days of creating value and generating revenue to the top line, that's the way. What's your take on that? What's your take on the job market today, and what do business owners need to be ready for?
Well, I think if you're a kid getting out of college or young woman getting out of college, you better understand that incentive compensation is here to stay. So if you can't actually show how you're being incentivized to the bottom line to contribute, then you should think twice about that company and how you want to work there. Do you want to be the person that's going to make a salary, or do you going to see someone like I was talking about earlier, where as you add value, that value is recognized, and because of that value, you actually have a higher earnings potential than, say, somebody that comes out that's not? I mean, I would say my issues where I would have been very quick to hire and slow to fire, where over time I've really just built up a more tolerance for just holding people accountable. And that's why I stick to this core values of integrity first. So I don't hold my people to any standards that I don't hold myself to. So if somebody says I'm going to do something and they say they're going to do it, I'm going to assume it's getting done. I'm not a micromanager. But what I've noticed is the generations coming in, a lot of them, they're either, I don't want to do this, or I don't feel like that's something I can do, or it's very confrontational. Maybe a lot of it's confidence, or maybe somebody's been doing everything for them, but I'm not going to be I'm not going to do your laundry, and I'm certainly not going to cook your dinners. You got to come out here and start producing, and you having a degree from, Columbia or Wake Forest or wherever, that's great. But that got you in the door. Now, how actively are you going to continue to pursue these things? So I do a lot with Gardner-Webb University, and one of the things to tell the kids there is, look, you're in competition with all the people sitting right next to you, whether you like it or not. And what are you doing that's going to make you different than anybody around you? Well, I mean, I look at the intern that's sitting in next to me in the next office. This kid's in here and he's already hustling. That matters. It matters a lot. Well, when he goes on his next, interview, or he goes into his next resume, or he goes into his next whatever, or he stays here for the rest of his life, I would love it. That's real world life experience that you just can't learn in a book. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in some aspects, I look at some of the institutional college in a way, it's being disrupted heavily as well. Not saying that, some of the universities are immune to some of this, but most of them are not. When my daughter spends more time on YouTube learning how to do things than she wants to be in school, that industry is being disrupted. So, I kind of look at it as, I thought for sure the youth coming in would say, I can learn to do anything because they have so much at their disposal and they've been, raised in the technology. Having the knowledge to do it and then physically doing it, though, are two different things. So I would say I'm a lot faster to let someone go because they don't show the drive or initiative or anything like that I expect. If somebody's putting in the effort, I'm willing to tolerate that. And you could actually be less successful in the logic processes of finance or math opposed to the heart or desire it is to actually be successful. I'd rather take that than the other 10 days to Sunday.
I get it. And that ties in closely. I think what a part of what you're saying is, regardless of what position you're in, but let's say it's someone who's in sales and we're all in sales to some degree. And we can use, you already brought this movie up, Glengarry Glen Ross, right? That's the extreme example of what it's all about. But it's sales. Earlier we talked about marketing. You started to get into sales a little bit. But if you take that person who's coming here, and as we talk to the intern, for example, we let him know that one of the best places you can be in a company is contributing to that top line, to be on the sales, to be the person that's bringing revenue into the business. You become very valuable to that company if you can do that. As it relates specifically not to marketing, but to sales and creating value, creating revenue for the company, what's your take on the state of sales today? And please continue to tie in the movie Glengarry Glen Ross.
Well, I would just say is people are very let's fake it and pretend and and all that. I'm definitely not a fan of any of that. I've always felt like being genuine and passionate about what you're selling really matters. So, when I really first got in the business, I delivered a death claim very early in my career. And I had written a guy a disability policy. And I thought for sure he would just, if something happened, he would, break his legs or something. He was a roofer, but he actually flipped off the roof and died. And he had two little kids. One was like 5 or 6 years old. The other kid was like 8 years old. And I brought a death claim to his wife. And it was the first time in my life I had to really check myself to say, did I do a great job? Did I do an average job or a great job? Well, this woman, she basically could take that money and she paid off their debt and she helped their kids go to college. I mean, she since remarried and has a whole different life than what she started with. But I mean, that made me very, very excited about what I was doing, even though it was in a very kind of depressing morbid type of time. But, when you're in our business and you do sell insurance or you sell investments or retirement or whatever, ultimately, when the rubber hits the road, there's going to be a moment in time where what you've done is going to really impact the whole bottom line. Well, if you're selling and you're not really getting that impact, your passion isn't there. So you surely shouldn't be doing it. Or you should be finding some other thing that actually you're passionate about to sell. I can sell disability because my dad couldn't get disability. So I remember when he had his third open heart surgery, we couldn't make it, and we had to go into programs that where, it was like a work rehab, well, if it wasn't for those things, say he had a good disability policy, there's more options he could have done. But when you don't have those options and you see those things firsthand, it really impacts you on how you get passionate about what you do. Well, I find that there's a gap and disconnect in the sales industry today where people are selling things that they're really not even passionate about, or they don't really feel or find a purpose in what they're doing. So there's such that, it's like a catechism that they got to go. And so, yeah, Glengarry Glen Ross, you tie that in, the whole A always B, B, C closing, and, what's it take? all those things are, it's overly stated. But I mean, telling people the truth, I got to tell people, hey, you spend way too much money. You spend so much money, there's no way you're going to be able to take care of your wife and kids in retirement. Or, hey, mister, your wife needs life insurance to protect you because you're the only income earner. And if something happens to you, whatever, you have to have boldness. And you just can't care what somebody else is going to say, because if you don't, you're really not doing your job. And when I married Sue, she's a doctor. She's like, I love my patients, but I don't not tell them they have cancer on their neck because I want them to like me. I actually tell them they have cancer on their neck because I like them, because I'm going to take care of them. So, the fear of being disliked, I think in a weird way gets in the way of just life in general. And, plug out to Sandler. I am going to a selling coach. This guy's name is Jim Dunn. And, Sandler's a really great school, but they tell you point blank, day one you walk in, seek to understand before being understood. Well, that's a diagnostic check. That's like checking it out, saying, look, am I a really good fit in here? Do I really understand the problems that are here? And can I solve them? Well, if I can't, don't waste time. Go to the next one. And so that would be the one thing I would encourage people is they're in sales and they're struggling, go to a good selling school, build a process that's around something. But then the other part of it is hold yourself accountable. Keep a cookbook, keep your stats, the whole, how do you know how well you're doing without keeping your scorecard? Well, in golf, if you don't track how many putts you have per hole or how you're hitting the ball on the driving range, I mean, you look at the different level of statistics that you can follow on yourself now. Well, if you don't want that accountability, don't go into sales, because it is a tough racket. Because if you just think it's going to come to you, it's not going to happen. So, Glenn Ross aside, you just have to have convictions, I think, to be in sales, or, get on a team, work as a team. And so in selling, David Yoder, my business partner, Jared Adet, my other partner here in Abiding Wealth, or in you and KazSource, we all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. Don't sit there and struggle doing something you're horrible at doing. Get your teammate to do it. So like you said, I've let a lot of people go. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna not feel good about myself if I have to tell somebody that they're not a good fit to work here anymore. But for somebody who's never had to do that before, that's a big deal. So, I mean, for me, I don't want to be the hatchet man all the time, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm all about accountability myself, so it's not hard for me to hold somebody else accountable. And I also look at it as a learning curve, so I would say on the sales side of it, in general, technology's helping, but ultimately technology without conviction isn't going to close anything. So you actually have to still be out there. So, not unless it's a pure internet sale and somebody's buying some product that you've sold off the internet. And if you have a retail business and you're not using the internet, well, I mean, you've been disrupted.
Right.
It's time to
wake
up.
You're selling the $10 widget that you can put on Amazon, although Amazon's the big winner there. But yeah, I get it. Well, then you also have to know on the sales side of things, you have to know where to look, right? So you have the technology, you have the sales skills. Now you have to understand what's out there and who's in pain, who's got the potential to be disrupted, who's got the potential to be put out of business. In the succession planning that you do for businesses, how do you tie that all together?
I mean, I get their attention by not selling first. And it's simple because I don't come in there with the agenda to sell a succession plan or sell a product or sell anything. I come in there to say, hey, tell me about your business. What's your 800-pound gorilla? What is the ugly thing that keeps you up at night? And I've definitely know that succession planning is a critical issue. But what happens if in the middle of the conversation they said, I just lost the key salesman I've had for 25 years and my sales are in the toilet and it's tanking? Well, the conversation might be, hey, let's put that succession planning conversation on the back burner to get this focus on XYZ first. But oh, by the way, time out. Once this is fixed, didn't forget about this needing done. And what I find is if you fix the 800-pound gorilla, you build the trust because you weren't in there on your agenda, you were on their agenda. And, if you can't fix what the 800-pound gorilla is, building the team around you that can. But, no one wants to talk about their business without them being in it. It's very normal, I think. But when you say, look, you spent this years and time and initiative and all these things to actually build a business, well, I find it ironic. The only time people talk about succession planning is you have to die to succeed, which is absolutely not what we're about. So let's talk about how do you develop your peers? How do you develop the second generation, the third generation? How do you actually set up to sell the business? How are you going to value the business? So, overall, I think the conversation of succession planning has been very insurance focused, and I think it's necessary. But on the flip side of it, it's always about the only way I know how to solve this is if you die. Well, that's a horrible succession plan. So I think the investment banking arm and the financial planning and the fee-based planning that we do really opens a different type of that conversation. So we kind of disrupted ourselves to say, hey, you need a buy, sell. You need all these things if something happened to you. But what you really need first is to fix the problem that's in front of you. And what is that problem? Because no offense, your business might not be around for 10 years or 20 years because the idea of having this legacy type business that's going to be existing 40 years from now, I'm not planning 40 years from now. I'm planning 5 to 10 years if I'm lucky on most businesses because the amount of automation coming down the line or the amount of robotics coming down the line, self-driving cars. There's a myriad of disruptors out here. Well, how do you continue to keep yourself relevant in the future? Well, maybe you don't have a business that's going to be a legacy-driven business. Maybe you need to capitalize it as much and as fast as you possibly can and sell your business. So, I love the idea of, 100-year, 120-year type business. Well, that's possible, but you're going to have to build like a more of an incubator type business where you have very, very flexible ways to go about things. Or you have to take like the old school GE style and have multiple lines of business that you can actually go and disrupt. But I think the one trick pony type of one slotted type of animal type business, if you don't have myriads of marketing channels and, if you're not on the front end of those distribution curves, I think you're going to find yourself obsolete. So, succession planning is a lot about going into the future. So, we brought a futurist right into our office, Jared Nichols, and with the Nichols Group. And, he spends a ton of time in here. And it's really about working on us and saying, well, where's the ball going again? And we're not trying to be like everything to everybody. But when you see someone that actually is out in that field, works with the SBA, works with all these different think tanks and incubators and universities and all this stuff, it makes you take a good pause to say, oh, that's the type of talent we need in here to make sure that we're not falling back. So I've seen the work that he's done with some of our clients and we're really appreciative. But I appreciate the work that he's done even for us. So, I think that's the other way of looking at it is non-conventionally. Are you focusing on building your replacements? Are you focusing on mentoring that next generation? But going back to like even a Jim Collins Good to Great, did you find the right people that belong on your bus? And if so, maybe the things that they're doing here today aren't going to be actually what you're going to need them to do tomorrow. But the fact that they can learn, train, mentor, their ethics, values, and all that stuff, create the job for them in the future. Build around your talent opposed to, just running off willy-nilly to say, oh, I'm going to disrupt the entire, investment business. That's a hard challenge. But saying, oh, I got 10 good people here that, we can find niches and ideas and stuff where we can still make a living. I'm good with that.
Here's something we're excited about, a sponsor for our podcast. But not only a sponsor, a marketing client of ours at KazCM. But know this, any business we put our brand behind, we believe in. and our sponsor for this podcast, The Peculiar Rabbit, located in Plaza Midwood. If you live in Charlotte or visit the area, you must check out the Plaza Midwood area. So many great spots, and at the top of the list is The Peculiar Rabbit. And while there, make sure to stop by Jackalope Jack's. I call Jackalope Jack's a bar's bar. And then for entertainment, go next door to the Rabbit Hole, known for its live music and events. So the next time you're looking for good eats or drinks, The Peculiar Rabbit is your spot. Tell them KazSource sent you.
Well, I want to pull one quick thing out of there that you said is disrupting yourself. And we talk about this all the time, right? We realize that, we've seen the health insurance industry. If you're an independent health insurance agent and you were selling Blue Cross Blue Shield, let's say, you were put out of business overnight when they said you can no longer make commissions off of those products in the state of North Carolina. Overnight, you're out. So we talk about, well, what if the administration came in and said all life insurance is now taxable, or some other reason, or a competitor came in and took us out? We talk about we could be put out of business tomorrow, but let's put ourselves out of business first before someone or some government or something happening puts us out of business. Expand on that a little bit more about disrupting yourself.
Well, it's like I have a client of mine that he was an inventor, and he literally he designed this thing. It was breakaway telephone wires, where the tree would hit the wire and it looked like almost like the breakaway rim from a basketball goal. The rim would go down and it would stop the backboard from breaking. Well, this thing would just unplug itself so the crew could come back in and plug it in. Well, this guy was way ahead of everybody, and he went to AT&T. He went to, I don't know who all he went to, but ultimately everybody said, "Well, no, we've already got these adapters, and we already got this, and those little plug-in things are very expensive, and we're not interested." Well, he ended up taking that technology and he went to Vodafone in Germany, and they paid for it, and they paid him handsomely for it. And it was because it was a disruptor of the whole entire way they thought about a process. It's been there forever, but they looked at it and said, well, the labor, the man hours, the whatever. You look at Tesla right now, they're building a plant that basically doesn't have a human in it. That's their goal, Well, that person doesn't file workers' comp claims. That person doesn't pay insurance. You don't pay 401k benefits. You don't. And ultimately, as a business owner, you surround yourself with people, but the minute you find clogs in your wheel where, oh, wow, that person isn't happy to do the job that I need them to do, well, don't make it a challenge for me to try to figure out a way to not need you, because I will spend the next 6 months trying to figure out a way to absolutely eliminate your position through automation. So part of it is, I think it's embracing automation, embracing these things, but also then as an employer, trying to make yourself continually be relevant. And so, I've learned coding. I mean, I'm not a coder, but I use VBA and I use Power BI, and I'm trying to stay ahead of where's the industry going. Well, you look at the tools, you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself by and who you get challenged by. So I've joined a peer group. So I spent a lot of time with a group called C12. Well, it's a Christian business owners group, and their whole focus, though, is how do you integrate your faith into your business? But we spent a ton of time talking about the relevancy of your business in the future. And we do a lot with, we call it blue oceans planning. Like, hey, where's the big, deep blue ocean? What is it that you're missing? What is it that you're not contributing to? What else could you be plugged into? Well, if you're not willing to have that strategic time with yourself, and actually, like you said, look at yourself and say, how can I be disrupted? Well, that goes back to the integrity of it. If you're out here charging fees for things that could be automated, don't think that in 10 minutes that somebody's not going to figure that out. And so that's where I'm going with a lot of this is, if you're not challenging that norm or that standard, and you're not on the front end of those conversations, don't be shocked when you're out of a job.
Shane, it was absolutely awesome having you on this podcast. From your experience as a leader to your understanding of the current state of business, we personally know all entrepreneurs can learn from you. The perspectives from Shane on marketing, sales, and disruption are now perspectives you as a business owner and entrepreneur can use for yourself. And for that, Shane, thank you. And for anyone looking to talk with Shane about their business, we encourage you to reach out to him. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or contact me on Twitter and Instagram at Eric_Kaz. Thank you for listening to our KazSource podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. Until next time, we're out of here. This podcast exists in large part because of KazCM, the content marketing business inside KazSource Inc. KazCM is excited to bring the content marketing services used at KazSource to you. Learn more by visiting KazCM.com.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's a big deal to us. We hope you found value in it, and if you did, we would be incredibly grateful if you gave us a review on iTunes. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and feel free to share it with anyone you know. More than anything, thank you again for listening. We appreciate it.